Women typically don't create companies for profit. They create companies for impact. And this is why we need profit and we need sustainability. Welcome back to the podcast. You know who I am. I'm Heather Chauvin, and welcome to Mama's in Control. So from now until the end of the year of 2021, we are going to be hosting a daily podcast series called Why Not You? The reason why we're doing this is because we have had the last few years of maybe hell. Maybe it's been luxurious for some, but I'm kind of done with my bullshit. I'm kind of done with everyone else's bullshit, and I am here to help you thrive. And I'm here to challenge your beliefs about motherhood, your beliefs about womanhood, your beliefs about if you are a business owner, and in general, leadership. Why not you? There's a quote out there that says, you get to keep what you defend. And I see a whole lot of women defending why they need to be burnt out, overwhelmed, overstretched. It doesn't matter if you are a corporate working mom, if you are a business owner, or if you are a stay-at-home mom. There's something here for you. I want you to know that you are important and you matter. And the better you feel, the more everyone benefits. So during the next month or so, you're going to be getting quick tips and strategies. You're going to be listening behind the scenes of how I coach inside of our Mastery and Mastery Business coaching experience. And I'm also going to be doing some live coaching. So I want you to dive deep, make it a priority to just have a few moments of yourself every single day. I want you to send me a text message with your questions. What do you want me to talk about? 313-710-5199. And if you want to actually do the work, not just listen to the work, then you got to get your booty over to the Why Not You Challenge. Go to heatherchauvin.com/my challenge. Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/my challenge. Or you can text the word WHY, WHY, to 313-710-5199. It's a $97 product. It's a $97 challenge. We're doing it live December 6th. So if you join after the challenge is complete, you get access to all of the recordings, all of the content. I'm going behind the scenes. I'm literally going to show you my energetic time management process, which is how to manage your energy, not your time. I have PDFs for you. I have step-by-step audio for you. I even have a video showing you what my calendar looks like and how I manage my business, my babies, and my body, my mind, and my soul. So this is kind of a mini version of my mastery coaching experience. So get your butt in there. And guess what? You're a podcast listener. And I value you, and I'm grateful for you. So if you use the promo code PODCAST, you will get it for 50% off for $47. So get your butt over there. Why Not You Challenge? Register today. We want to see you on the inside of the community. We're doing it live December 6th to the 10th. But if you join after that, you still get all the juicy goodness. So head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/my challenge, or text me 313-710-5199. Text the word Y for details and use the promo code podcast for $47. Yeah, why not? Why not you? Let's dive in. Hey ladies, I am back, and today I'm really excited for you to hear this inspiring conversation and interview that I did with Jessica, and I'm going to introduce her in a moment, but before I do, I just want to reignite another spark inside of you that, you know, I never in my entire life wanted to necessarily be an entrepreneur or a business owner. it was accidental because I wanted to create something on my own terms. And in order to do that, you have to unlearn so much of who the world tells you to be. And I don't always attract, or in my community have women and men and humans who want to start a business or who are business owners. This is about freedom. This is about impact. And entrepreneurship is one type that you can create impact, but it's not the only way you can create an impact. But I'm also a huge fan of women who are kind of just making an impact. And this is one way that it can happen. So I had a conversation with Jessica Jackley. She is an entrepreneur, an investor, a professor, and speaker who has spent her career focusing on social justice. She talks about this inside of our conversation today, how she got started, which is a really cool story. And in effort to find meaningful ways to inspire her own children's curiosity, empathy, and passion for social and environmental impact, she most recently founded Alltruists. I'm going to spell that out for you because you're going to want to remember this. Alltruists, Alltruists, at-home, kid-friendly volunteer projects for families. She's best known as the co-founder of Kiva, the world's first crowdfunding site for microenterprises that has facilitated over $1.5 billion in loans worldwide. Additionally, Jessica teaches social entrepreneurship at Marshall School of Business at USC and was previously a visiting practitioner at Stanford Center for Philanthropy. She is amazing. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband and her 4 children. So we're going to check out and listen to Jessica today. But I want you to also go check out Alltruists and their subscription boxes that they have. It's a perfect holiday gift for children, for families. I was sent one, absolutely loved it, did it with my boys. We got 2. We had one on teaching, facilitating, understanding people who are experiencing homelessness, and then also food insecurity. So it educates the children. There's also an interactive piece, and then there's also a giving piece. This is a beautiful gift, and it's something that just keeps on giving, and it's educational. And Jessica dives more into why she created it, how she created it, and all of that magic inside here. So go check her out. Go check out Alltruists, AllTruists.com. Welcome, Jessica, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so, you have no idea how excited I am to have this conversation with you. I said a few things before we hit record, but with my background in social work and really working with people who are experiencing homelessness and a lot of the social justice issues front lines, and now being on the other side of that in a completely different industry, but also working with a different population. I was just really excited. So
I am so glad to hear it. Well, I'm really eager and honored to talk to you, and do feel like you're instantly a kindred spirit. I think we have a lot of overlap to cover.
Yay. Okay. So let's dive into, I want to hear a little bit about your backstory as an entrepreneur, a professor, speaker, but of course, why you were so passionate about social justice. And then we're going to get into how we can kind of start infusing this into our values as parents and business owners. We'll see where the conversation goes. So yeah, just a little bit of background on you and what sparked you and inspired you to make an impact that you are today.
Perfect. So I became an entrepreneur for the first time very accidentally. I was out of college. I wanted to do something important with my life. I wanted to work on things that were meaningful, right? And bigger than myself. And so in a very naive way, looking back, I thought, well, the only way to do that is to go work for a nonprofit because for-profits are about taking and getting people to, give their money for things they don't even really need probably. But nonprofits are the good guys. They are the ones giving and serving and finding people who are overlooked. And so I graduated college with my philosophy and poetry degrees and sort of flung myself out into the world without any kind of career plan. And I found my way to a temporary administrative role all the way out in California at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Now, I'd grown up in Pennsylvania. I hadn't been that far from home, and I moved across the country for a boy. So it was, again, this is not prescriptive for anyone, about to graduate college, wondering what to do with their life. Like, I wouldn't recommend these steps necessarily, but this is what happened.
What not to do.
Right? It worked out. But basically, I ended up landing in this place at the Stanford Business School where, my day-to-day wasn't riveting work. However, I found myself in an environment that was filled with incredible people who every day were thinking about how to use business skills and entrepreneurial thinking to solve social problems. And I very quickly realized, oh, wait, business in and of itself isn't all bad. It doesn't have to be. It can be anything. It can just be somebody who's using these sort of strategies, right, to move money and people and sort of rally teams and organize things to go make whatever impact in the world they want to make, whether it's nonprofit, for-profit, or any other structure. It's sort of, I became pretty agnostic as to that. It's a tax code, not a religion, right? Like you can have a business doing amazing things in the world, really serving people in a beautiful way and in a scalable way. And you can have nonprofits. And by the way, you can have the opposite of that. Not businesses are not all good, but some can be if it's done right and carefully and thoughtfully and with a lot of integrity and commitment to, a mission above other things. And then there are nonprofits that are lovely and doing incredible work as well. But there are also a lot of small ones. There's just not a big barrier to entry. So a lot of people can just up and start a nonprofit, and not all of them are doing a ton of great work, sometimes small, reasonable, lovely things, and sometimes not so much of anything. So it's all mixed up. And I became really interested in figuring out what really worked, what could really move the needle and change people's lives for the better. And I learned one day I stayed after work and heard a guy lecturing at the business school. His name was Muhammad Yunus, and he would, 3 years later, after I'd heard him speak, win the Nobel Peace Prize for his pioneering work in modern microfinance, which basically, if that's a new word for anyone, it's microfinance is sort of financial services for the very socioeconomically disadvantaged. So super tiny loans, microinsurance, things like that. And I became interested in microloans, this idea that a little bit of capital in the right hands at the right time, ideally with some training and support, could just change a person's life. I became just intrigued by this idea. So I quit my job. I moved to East Africa. I begged my way into like an unpaid internship with an organization doing tiny grants, not even loans, but it was close enough for me to just get started. And I basically there started to ask a lot of what if questions. Like I met entrepreneurs who were not the kind of entrepreneurs I'd been surrounded by in Silicon Valley, but people, goat herders, seamstresses, farmers, people who were doing so much with very little. And when they had a tiny loan of maybe $50 or $100, they were able to really change the trajectory of their business and suddenly could actually support their families and maybe even hire others in the community. And they were these little tiny machines, these tiny microenterprises were these machines for growth and sustainability and really like meeting the needs of those families' lives. Anyway, fast forward. While I was there, I thought, well, wait, this is sort of a typically, for-profit way. It doesn't have to be, but, it's banking, right? At the end of the day. So a lot of these micro banks and microfinance institutions, some were nonprofits, some were for-profits. But basically, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if my friends and family back on the other side of the planet could lend little bits of money to the entrepreneurs that I'm meeting? Wouldn't that be fun? Now, that was very early crowdfunding, but I didn't know that wasn't a word we used at the time. It was that early. Mm-hmm. So long story short, that led to the creation of my first venture, Kiva, which was a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. But that grew really fast. Our first round of loans was about $3,000 to 7 entrepreneurs in Uganda. that worked. So we sort of ramped it up a little bit, but things took off drastically. That the first year of Kiva's existence, we facilitated 500,000 in loans. The next year it was 15 million, the next 40, the next 100. And Kiva's closing in on it on $2 billion. It's about 1.6 or 7 billion today. Wow. And the thing is, it's $25 at a time, right? From regular people that have an internet connection and a credit card or a PayPal account, lending to other people who have a small loan need to grow their micro businesses. So that was the first thing I got to be a part of as a founder. And it was crazy because it really took off beyond my wildest dreams so fast. And it made me realize just a few years in that I could be a builder of ventures. And that's what I wanted to do. So I went, we can skip through about a decade. I built a lot of other things, for-profits, nonprofits, a consulting firm. I wrote a book. I teach. I do a lot of sort of like a portfolio of work, usually focused on entrepreneurship and social impact related, ventures. But today I run a brand new little startup called Alltruists, and we exist to create impact projects, kind of volunteer and service projects that you can do at home with your kids anytime. So they sort of arrive very much like any other sort of subscription box might arrive, but they have within them not just something to consume and use and read, but things to send back out into the world. So you can kind of give back and reach back out with your kids from the comfort of your own home on your own schedule, because it's really hard to get out the door and volunteer with kids.
Yeah. Oh man, so many questions I want.
Yeah, that was my long answer. There you go.
No, I love it, because I'm sure you hear this all the time when people are like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. How do you do it all? All the BS questions that people ask women, right? Especially when you're raising children. And what I was hearing throughout your story, especially at the beginning of it, and I want everyone to hear this, is you were curious. You were curious and you had a desire, and you were like, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go to this country. I'm going to talk to these people. What is this microfinance? Like, what is this? And then just slowly figuring out, how can I, what if, right? That open-ended question, like, what if something was possible, to get to now where it's, gifting billions of dollars away to these entrepreneurs on the other side of the world. And I've heard of Kiva before, multiple times, from either coaching programs that I've been a part of or organizations. I've heard of Kiva multiple times. And knowing it's like, when we're in a spot, a lot of times when people are in a spot, they're like, how can I make an impact? How can I, who am I to do that? And it's like, who are you? Legit, look at the privilege you have around you. Instead of going to Starbucks or grabbing this, or grab your Starbucks and do this, but just the magic of little bites, the magic of giving a tiny bit at a time, and what that does as a collective, like you said, crowdfunding before it was crowdfunding. Mind-blowing. When we think we don't have an impact, like we don't matter.
Yeah, I love that you honed in right away on the curiosity factor. I just think it's very easy to take the stories that we're told about how the world works, or who someone else, I'm doing air quotes, but you can't see, but who the other might be, and just take it as truth. And then that shapes the role that we believe we can play in the world. So if you're told sad sob stories about, yes, very stark, challenging realities of the world, there's a lot of problems, there's a lot that needs to be fixed. But to just hear it and take it as, well, I guess things are broken, and what are the ways I can help? Oh, it's these 2 or 3 things. Well, I guess I'll do those. That's fine. And there's a lot, there's an efficiency to it. But when there's something that really captures your interest, and you see there's like an emotional spike, either of you're intrigued or very hopeful, right? Like, oh my gosh, I never knew this the theory of change was a thing, or I never knew about this possible solution to a problem. Or maybe that emotional spike is anger. Like, are you kidding me? There's still modern day slavery. What? Yeah. Whatever, right? Like whatever the thing is that you learn about, when you notice yourself responding, I think, if whenever possible, follow that through, be curious. Can't always quit a job and move to the other side of the planet for, to do an exploratory sort of adventure. That was a thing that I'm so glad I did when I was younger and did not have 4 kiddos that I'm responsible for. So there are times in life when it's a little easier, but I still think that it's possible to learn so much from wherever you are in the world, and to try to get your own sort of insights, gather as much data as you can, talk to people who might have a different experience than you have, be curious and dig around a little bit so that you can learn for yourself sort of what's out there, what's going on. Because here's the thing, for me, when I learned a new story, not just the story that there are people suffering in the world. And honestly, as I was told for the first 2 decades of my life, my job was it's kind of icky to say, especially with everything going on in the country right now, but it was very like white savior-ish, right? Like swoop in and save things and help the situation. That's what I was told a lot, directly and otherwise. But what I saw and experienced when I was curious and went to learn more was that there was another side to every story. And there's a side of strength and triumph. And what was often needed was access to resources the same way I had access. It was more about fairness and justice, not about me swooping in to help, just kind of changing, access to opportunity, right? So anyway, it changed the role that I believed I could have, because I heard new stories from people that I wanted to be helpful to. And as I understood them and I understood their own potential differently, it was very humbling. And I understood my own role could be different too. So being curious, really hearing and learning as much as possible the stories of people directly, especially the stories of people that you want to interact with, to connect it with, to be useful to. I think that's kind of the only way to start. And the best way certainly to come up with new ideas or new insights is to how to respond.
Love it. I just keep hearing, are we focused on the problem or the solution? And sometimes those solutions aren't there and we have to create them. And that's what we have access to, and all the resources. So let's fast forward to COVID, and the world's shutting down and the problems are not going away.
No, they are not.
They're getting worse, and we are stuck at home. And like you said, you were at home with your children, obviously wanting to make an impact, but let's talk about Alltruists now and how this idea came about. And I just love it. Love it.
Thank you for the question. It's like twist my arm. Besides talking about my own children, it's my favorite thing to talk about. So, and it's related. So, there I was, I had our 4th little lady. We have 3 boys and a little baby girl, though she's almost 2 now, which is nuts. But, I gave birth in early February, and then the world got weird a month later. So there we were, already at home nesting, sort of in 4th trimester coziness, right? Blissed out. Mm-hmm. And that just continued for us, because then we had to be on lockdown. We had to be, staying in like everyone else was. So as that happened, and as we felt very fortunate to be able to often have things delivered to the house, not every time, but whenever possible, we would do a big grocery run and have that delivered to the door. So life with interacting with the outside world became what's showing up on the doorstep, that we can then remember the days of wiping down boxes too. I mean, I just remember.
Oh gosh, I know someone's going to have a whole montage.
I know. I'm sorry to trigger anyone here, for real. It was just crazy times. So I remember just feeling like all we're doing is consuming. And it just felt awful. It felt yucky. We would open a box and eat the thing or read the thing or wear the thing, whatever it would be. But most often it was literal consumption. And then my kids also have been very fortunate to have friends and family who had gifted them with, STEM kits and learn how to cook this new thing, or here's an arts and crafts box, but a lot of subscription boxes that again gave them something to learn or do or play with or make. Mm-hmm. And those were all lovely. I mean, I was downright inspired by them, and they would get so excited. I mean, the number of times they would rip open a box or a package right on the front mat, or just like the door open and you couldn't close it because they were sitting there right in the doorway, right? So they loved it. They loved it. And I started to think, one of the many things that paused during that time was reaching out into the world, not just to go grocery shopping in real life, like big whoop, but instead reaching out in ways that helped our kids understand the values that we hold as a family, in particular, service and volunteering. We weren't getting out to do anything helpful for anyone else. We were living in our own little bubble more than ever and just existing for ourselves. And it just felt, yes, Reza, my husband, and I work on things that we hope and believe are useful to the world and bridges out into the world. But for our kids, it became like inside the walls of our home. You get it. So anyway, I started to wonder, what would it look like? Are there useful, helpful things we can do from home that are, I want to say volunteer projects as we grow as a company and learn what works and what's possible. Impact projects has been language that just very recently is really resonating with us. So here's what we've created. So we're only a few months in. We've shipped 4 boxes. Our 5th is coming up and ready to ship soon. But basically, we focus on a new issue every month. Our first was on the unhoused and homelessness. The second box was on saving the pollinators. It was about, we all need the bees. It's really fun. The third was on hunger and food insecurity. The fourth was on refugees. And the 5th, coming out in December, is on clean water. And every time we work with a great nonprofit partner to design not just learning materials and empathy building materials, but also a really cool impact project, as well as, at least 2, 3, sometimes 4 other activities that deepen understanding about the thing at hand. So for example, with the first box on homelessness, there's a little mini book that teaches kids. It's basically a primer on the issue. Like, what are we talking about today? What is homelessness? Why does it happen? What are the, fun facts and not so fun facts about this issue in the world? What are answers to tough questions that parents might be a little nervous to answer or have to navigate on their own? We really try to make it a guide for a great discussion and to give parents confidence they can walk through these tough topics, as a sounding board, as a partner, and as a learner as well with their kids. But we try to provide a guide there. We have a little vocab list. Anyway, it's everything you'd need to sort of get up to speed in a kid level version, like 101 of the issue. So that's Learn.
And I agree. I have the book because
I
got a box and it was fabulous. Like, really,
I'm so
really,
happy
really
to hear
good.
you say that.
Yeah. Because as somebody who's worked with these vulnerable populations, you develop the language because it's your life.
Yeah.
But when you don't, you have absolutely no idea. And it was great. And just to sit there and my son being able to ask me those questions and to go through it as well. Amazing.
Awesome. That's so nice. And by the way, if ever anyone out there uses this, I love all feedback. So, how can we make it better? What was helpful? Was there a slow part for you? Was there an activity that was a bit of a bust? Like, I want to hear all of it, but it's really nice to hear the positive feedback. So thank you. So the goal is to just teach, right? Here's what we're talking about today. That's step 1. Step 2 is connect. As we just talked about, you and I, hearing, being curious and, in my opinion, hearing stories from people that have experienced this in a different way than you have is absolutely fundamental, crucial. Like, you got to do it before you keep moving along with best intentions. So Connect is a mini book that we write that's full of stories, 5, 6 stories, usually profiles of kids who've experienced being unhoused or have experienced, living far away from clean water or who are refugees. But so we try to profile a handful of kids all over the world that have stories to tell. And what I love, I have, as I mentioned, I have 3 boys. I have twins, they're 10, and then a little 6-year-old sweetheart. And one of my 10-year-olds, the first thing he always does is grab the Connect booklet, the one with the stories, and like tuck away and read. And he looks for people who in some way are like him. Oh, this is another 10-year-old. This is another twin. This is another, person who's been to a country that either I visited or I know about because I learned about it. So he loves to find his own connection there. And it makes me really happy to watch. And then the third step is the heart of the experience. It's act, right? So learn, then connect, then act, and then give and do more. Give is there's $5 from every box that goes to the nonprofit partner that we work with, and do more as a collection of all sorts of other stuff you can do to deepen your engagement and go above and beyond, or just to do extra activities with materials provided in the box so you can really get what we're talking about. In the clean water box, for example, it's, like a filtration activity, or you build with pipes, or there's, spoiler alert, but there's a life straw so you can
Cool.
see what it's like. Yeah, they're really fun gadgets and tools and toys and treasures that we try to give kids that are keepers. Anyway, but for ACT, to just get through this part, I'm sorry, I love talking about our product so much. I
love it. I'm like visualizing the booklet, going through. It's very, yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Well, so ACT, as you know and have experienced, it's really the thing that more often than not is, it's the service project, it's the impact project. And usually it's something that goes back out into the world. So for example, for the homelessness focused box, kids make a keychain with these beautiful wooden beads and like leather cord, and it goes back out into the world, mailed to our partner in Mexico that builds homes for individuals that are unhoused. And as those families move into their brand new homes, their first house key is put on this keychain that our kid community has made. It's just so lovely. And there's a card that you send along too. So it's lightweight, but it's really high impact. And I think helps kids just really viscerally kind of connect to this picture of, this moment in time where a family's life is changing. Another example that I mentioned, that we all need the bees. We all need bees. So the actual box always becomes something. And I'm really proud of this design feature. It's super fun. And the boxes are bright and colorful inside and out. And for the bees one, it actually becomes a pollinator hotel that you can put outside for solitary mason bees and other bees that exist everywhere and are actually super pollinators, even more than our beloved honeybees. So you kind of learn about that whole process as well. It's so fun, and on. I can keep going, but I'll cut myself off. There's really sweet, fun impact and volunteer projects in every box. And that's really the point of it. You learn about something and then you respond with generosity and compassion and action so that kids aren't left learning about these tough things in a way that makes them feel helpless. If anything, I hope my dream is that kids will feel empowered in this way and then beyond, to reach out into the world and be helpful and to participate.
I love that. And you, Jessica, are not the expert in all of these areas, I'm assuming. You are the connector and the curator of finding experts that can come together, correct?
I am. I'm smiling because the truth is I also have taught at USC for a good decade, and my class is entrepreneurial solutions to the global goals. So I know quite enough. I know enough to be dangerous, but 100%, yes, we try to get 5 or 6 expert sort of curators to help. They certainly read through all the content and give us a bunch of feedback. And we're talking like, for example, for the refugees one, we had somebody from UNHCR read through the content. We had 3 different nonprofit leaders read through the content. We had people who've experienced the issue so that we were sensitive to that. So we do our best to have experts read through, people that have way more depth of experience than I do. But it's funny, I do know enough to be able to speak somewhat intelligently for at least a few minutes about these topics. But yes, it drops off from there.
Well, and that too, like it's just like running a business where you're like, I need to know enough that if like something happened, I could like jump in or like get another expert to like come inside or something like that.
Yeah.
But you also want to learn about these things and understand them. But the reason why I asked that question is because a lot of people want to make an impact and they're like, well, I'm not an expert. What do I know? And I'm like, go find somebody who is and leverage yourself to gather the funds or to put yourself out there. Like maybe you're the organizer of things. You don't have to know it all. I think a lot of people get really in our heads of we need to know it all. And from a parenting perspective, I also see that as well. Like I need to be the expert. If I'm doing this box with my children and they're talking about homelessness or water or food shortage, you get to learn along with your children.
Exactly.
Like, I think that's so freaking important. We could know nothing and say, let's figure this out together. I think that is so incredibly important.
Yeah. I have this quote that I think I will reference forever because it was just so funny and so just spot on. One of my friends was like, oh my gosh, Jessica, like, I just wish my kids would ask me something that I like know the answers to. Like I'd have the sex talk every day. I don't care, but they keep asking me about climate change. I don't know what to say. It's terrifying. And I thought that was so funny. They'd rather have the birds and the bees talk than talk about like the planet or it cracked me up, but it makes sense, right? They're exposed to so much. They know so much. They come home equipped with new information that maybe we've never even encountered. And then we're supposed to be the guides and the experts and so it's, I'd like to think that part of the value is in learning together about 100%. Everything that, all these important issues.
We're always co-creating, right?
Yeah.
And this is, so we're not done the conversation, but for anyone who's like, how do I get my children or how do I gift my children or somebody else this experience and opportunity? Where can they go? And we'll tell them at the end as well, but just in case they don't know now.
Absolutely. So our website is Alltruists. It's 2 L's, ALLTRUISTS.com. And there are 2 ways you can get engaged. So one, you can buy a single box anytime on the issues that have already kind of come out in our month-to-month subscriptions, which is the other option. So subscriptions or single box. Subscribers get the box issue first. So when it was September, we mailed off. Well, we had the housing box, the bees box, and on, as I mentioned, but then they're available in the store a few weeks later for anybody to buy. So as of right now, we have 5 different boxes in the store, and we'll have a new one, at least 1, soon to be 2 or more every month.
Amazing. It's such a beautiful gift to give somebody. I know for myself, when I have a child in my life beyond my children who has a birthday or something come up, it bothers me because you can see the gift that you're giving and the parents are like, no more crap, no more crap, no more crap. Yeah. So such a great time.
You know what, actually, I have to tell you, because I'm really proud of this too. So we're kind of experimenting with what is this of value to people. But for example, the second box with the pollinators, it's a disappearing box. So the whole thing is used. You build and you make with everything in the box. And then you actually use the box itself for the project. I mean, you might recycle like one little part of the box flap, and depending on how you make the roof and other things. So we try to make boxes that are super low waste or even no waste. So we have had disappearing boxes in the past, and it is the weirdest thing to like rip open a box, do the stuff, and then realize at the end of it, it's all gone. Like you used it, or you're going to reuse it again and again. Like I mentioned the life straw, like it's very clearly a keeper. Small thing is like a touchstone or a tool for the future. But anyway, we try really hard not to make it such that these things build up, because I know what that is like.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, especially as parents, right? You're like, damn it, no.
I know.
And the impact that we can make. I'm a true believer in planting seeds for our children. I mean, we don't need to do it all, but we can definitely, we can do way more than we are now. Yeah. So Jessica, I want to talk about failure.
Let's do it. Bring it.
Let's talk about failure, because we want to make an impact. And sometimes when we're about to do that, we're like, I don't know what to do. And then we get the idea and we start taking action. And you had a failed venture after Kiva. Can we talk about this?
Yep. So yes and no. No, I did. So my first venture worked like crazy and quickly. And if anything, I think one of my competitive advantages is I'm a big dreamer, right? So I was surprised that it even outpaced me. So Kiva worked. That's the headline. And then my second venture, ProFounder, was super early for-profit crowdfunding before crowdfunding was legal. So at least based on equity or revenue share, it was a security. So it was a legal just mess. I don't know, jungle. I don't know what the right analogy is, but it was like we were in the weeds in terms of figuring out how to make it possible state by state for anybody to actually invest for real in a small business that they loved. And we're talking like the average raise for the small businesses that we ended up working with on our platform was about $30,000 to $35,000. They ended up having about 30 investors, 25 to 30. And so we're talking not big VC funding, not millions of dollars, but legally, it was actually more difficult to do. And without going into all the details, because I think it's interesting, but unless you're really into like state by state legal exemptions and like technical terminology for friends and family or private or public raises of capital, you're not going to like this. So anyway, basically that venture was trying hard to do something in the midst of a ton of legal barriers. And I'm really proud of what we built. That said, 3 years in, we'd raised 2 rounds of funding. I was pregnant with the twins. I was about to raise another round. And the Jobs Act came about. It was legislation that ended up being passed and ended up making crowdfunding up to $1 million from as many people as you want for, whatever amounts they wanted to chip in. They could literally, invest $1 into your venture. It became legal. And as we saw this legislation begin to brew and sort of become a reality, we doubled down and put our energy into that and into making Title IV, the crowdfunding exemption, what we thought it should be. And it was an incredible journey, but did it make the whole thing that we had built not as relevant? Yep. And did we know that even once this legislation would be passed, we would be waiting a few years for the SEC to make rules around what this legislation meant? Yes. So I felt like there are stories of people facing actual, real, literal storms, right? As they're climbing up a mountain. There's one very famous one about folks trying to summit Everest, and half of them sort of see the storm clouds. They're almost at the top. They've trained for years for it, et cetera. And half of them decide, I'm going to keep going at all costs, even with the storm coming, I'm going to summit because that's the goal. And the other half, decide, nope, too dangerous. We're going to turn back. It sucks. But we came as far as we could without it being a disaster. And basically the folks that go to the top, keep going at all costs, end up perishing in the storm. And the ones who turned back lived to tell, right? And I really felt like, okay, I have this funding, I have this team, I could keep going, I could keep raising money. We had a Series A offer kind of ready to go. But there I was, 8.5 months pregnant with twins, becoming a parent for the first time. So personally, I was facing not a storm, but a lot of chaos coming soon, right? Diving into parenthood, 2 babies at a time. Yeah, right. And then, legally and otherwise, the landscape was changing. And so I felt like, the landscape, entrepreneurship can be very male dominated. And I felt like, yeah, I get it. There's a line of thought that says, keep going at all costs, raise the money anyway, figure it out, wait for the SEC to make their laws, pivot and start over virtually at this moment in time. But I didn't feel like that was wise for investors, for the company, and certainly for me personally, as a soon-to-be first-time parent. And so I ended up winding the company down, giving some of the money back to investors, selling off the assets, and giving some of the assets to investors, and basically saying, you know what, I think it's wiser to wait and see how this unfolds, and really to let the storm kind of blow over, as opposed to holding on for dear life at all costs. I didn't think that would be good for everybody. So in some ways, yes, the business objectively did not work, right? But in other ways, I'm just really proud of making a reasonable decision that, we did well, I think, by investors and advisors and supporters, in as much as we tested out the assumptions we said we would test. We learned as much as we could. We did serve dozens of entrepreneurs. We built something valuable that was then used to build other technologies and other crowdfunding sites that former investors ended up taking advantage of and using. I mean, there was goodness there, and we did add value along the way. But that was my version of failure. I have lots of other more painful direct versions, but I think the thing to me that feels meaningful and important to dwell on, and as we all reflect, right, on our own bumps in the road or unexpected things that happen. I think, yes, if you want to go through life thinking about your days through looking at your days through the lens of success versus failure, have fun, good luck. But I like to think I have intentions, I have goals, I have assumptions about and expectations about what will happen.
Yeah.
And if I get that wrong, if I learn and realize, oh, this expectation was off a little bit, let me learn and incorporate that new information and try again. I don't feel, you can, feel free. I love feeling all the feelings, but I can spend time feeling bad about that. Or I can say, that's interesting. I'm curious, right? The theme of our conversation. I'm curious, how can I try again in a smarter way with a realigned set of expectations? I think just iterating along the way and adjusting as you go and continuing to put your next best definition, your next best version out there. It's a lot gentler and I think smarter, more sustainable way to operate. So yeah, there can be big, massive, so really surprising, unexpected things that happen, but you don't have to throw it all away and say, well, now I don't know anything. I mean, I've built other things since then. And a lot of the things that I learned during that venture have been helpful. Yeah. And, there's obviously micro versions of this all the time, every day. Like I thought one thing would happen, another thing happened. Good to know. Let me adjust and keep going.
Yes. Especially when you're raising children or businesses and you are, I've realized, I don't know how long ago that, when you perfectionism is not allowed to the party. It just, it cannot be. And it's messy, right? You're like, okay, we're doing this. Yes, have your plan, have your strategy, but you got to work it and you will have to shift and pivot as you go. And the messier you let it be mentally, for me anyways, because I want to be a perfectionist and I'm like, that's not going to serve higher good. So I got to just let it go and ship it, get it out. And it feels so emotionally uncomfortable. But what I'm hearing you say is your relationship to failure, you're just whatever, move on. You're not hanging out there going, I failed. And have you always been that way, or has that just come with time and experience?
Oh, no. This is the lovely result of getting older, which is just, a gift in all the ways. I will say that my dad, my mom was a teacher for 43 years. She's an amazing human being and the kid whisperer and baby whisperer. We joke, if she comes over and babysits the kids for an evening, we'll go out to dinner and we'll come back and they've made some amazing milestone. They'll learn to read while we're gone or whatever. So we joke because she's just like a wizard. And then my dad has been an entrepreneur on and off and an engineer and all sorts of things. And I remember had this crazy collection of business books. He always has. And I remember being 9 or 10 years old and grabbing off his shelf. This will answer your question. Grabbing off the shelf a Martin, do you know Martin Seligman, Learned Optimism? It's basically, right? So I grabbed this at 10 and I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? This is super, you can just choose how you respond to stuff in life. Bad things can happen and you can think this way or that way. And if you think this way, you end up bouncing back faster. Or if you respond with this kind of reaction, it's worse. And it felt like this amazing secret code, this jujitsu sort of guide to making lemonade out of lemons, for lack of a better phrase, but just making the things that happen to you, using them for the best possible, next step, right? The best possible learning or outcome or whatever. And I just thought it was magic. And so I will say that did sink in early on. And I've always been a pretty aggressive optimist, but it's one thing to know, in your head that if you respond this way, you have to sort of coach yourself to think and say the things in the voice in your head, right? But over time, that voice becomes more automatic and stronger and more confident, and kind of you believe yourself a little bit more than when you are trying it on for size growing up.
I love that. And nobody's so hard on us the way we're hard on ourselves. People, you may have failed at something. Nobody really notices. Everyone is very egocentric and in their own little world and worried about their own problems, that when you fail, they're like, oh, what's new? What's new?
Yeah.
Someone the other day was asking me about something that happened a year ago. They're like, oh yeah, when's that happening? I'm like, oh, that's already happened. And in my world, it was such a big thing. And they're like, oh yeah, I didn't even notice.
Right. Oh, it's easy to think that the world, not the world revolves around us. No one would be like, yeah, I think that's true. But it is surprising. We get in our heads and worried about what others are going to think. And you're right. Sometimes nobody even noticed. So,
yeah. Yes. So for example, today I I actually had somebody send me a message asking about like, which microphone do you use? I needed it to be perfect for podcasting and that. And I was like, I podcast in my car most of the time on my voice memos if I'm a solo podcast. And today in particular, it was going to be audio anyways, but I wasn't feeling great. And they were redoing my office and my kids stole my headphones. So I'm just sitting in bed with my laptop. That's it. It's like, just put your work out into the world. We don't need to overcomplicate this and pivot.
No, you're exactly right. Don't make it too hard.
Yes. Okay. So we also don't need to make volunteering an impact too hard because you have created a solution for that. So let's wrap it up and let everyone know again what you have. I know you got a lot going on, but what you have going on that people can get involved in, where they can find you, and all the things.
You are amazing. Thank you. It's like an excuse to talk about all my favorite things. So again, the main thing that I am doing that I'm so proud of is Alltruists, Alltruists. So I wake up thinking about it. I fall asleep thinking about it. And my goal is to empower anybody to be able to serve and to volunteer, even if it is, they can't get out of their house, even with very young kids or multiple kids, wherever you are, you can figure out a way on your own time in your own cozy living room to do something compassionate, kind, generous for the world, and to take time to learn about something and imagine other people's stories and to do something useful and giving. So my goal is to activate anybody to be able to give back and to volunteer. There's so many, I love geeking out on this. There's so many interesting statistics, but 90% of people say they want to volunteer, but that it's just too hard to get out the door and to find opportunities and to schedule them and to bring your kids. That's nearly impossible, right? So I'm really hoping this, can you imagine, right? Only about 30% of us do volunteer at any given time. So imagine unlocking another 2/3 of the population to be able to get to participate with not just their, money, which is lovely, but also with their time and talents. That's the vision.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
And what else do you got going on? What else?
Well, I have my 4 kiddos. I also have a fund that invests in very early stage companies, seed and pre-seed, if that's familiar terminology to listeners, but basically really early days, usually tech-enabled startups, but startups that are run by entrepreneurs who might be overlooked or unexpected or under-networked. And my co-founder, Yohei, and I can kind of very quickly provide community and resources, and we can be thought partners to try to bump them up to the next level, the next phase of their growth and development. So we just started over the last year, and we're actually still raising, money for the fund to try to close it out and invest more. But so it's not my personal pile of money or something that does not exist, but it's wonderful investors that want to contribute to incredible entrepreneurs in the very earliest stages of their journeys. And so that's what we get to do. And it's super fun. That's called untapped capital. And other than that, honestly, what I love about, I really don't want to, in a very trite way, sort of brush off the last, what is it now? 22, 23 months of the pandemic. I will say clearing the decks, starting from scratch, I think it provides, as we all had to do in many ways, I think it provides a great opportunity to re-engage only with what's really worth it and not just be busy, right? So I know this. And I have to say, like, doing service together, volunteering together is at the top of our list. And it's been really nice to very intentionally make space for the most important things as we reach back out and kind of rebuild our schedules and keep them under the radar of busy, and keep them really focused and intentional and provide space to, do what really matters. So that's what we're really trying to do.
I love that. And I love how you talk about just being intentional, because I think when we carry that over to everything, right? Our time, our resources, how we're spending time together as a family, we don't need to be perfect about it, but just keep asking yourself, does this feel good? And if it doesn't, we can pivot or realign. Exactly. So Jessica, thank you. I have one last question for you.
Yes.
How do you want to be remembered as a human?
Good one. I hope that I'm remembered as a person who really loved well. That's it.
Simple, and yet so challenging on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if people want to contact you, are you active on Instagram or social or anything? Or is
my Instagram's private, but I have a Twitter account, and I have and Alltruists has all sorts of social media accounts, and I'm really easy to reach that way.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, that's it. And I wanted to thank you for listening today, because I truly believe you are exactly where you need to be. And now I have a favor to ask. In exchange for the value you've gained from this free podcast, I'd be forever grateful if you would leave us a review on iTunes. Share the show with at least one woman in your life who you feel would benefit, and or take a screenshot and share it on social media. And always feel free to tag me at Heather Chauvin. The world does not benefit from your guilt and fatigue. The world needs more women who are willing to unlearn everything they've been taught. Women who are courageous enough to feel good and not let guilt run the show. I believe you are that courageous woman. To see if my community and coaching is the right fit for you and your big vision, the relationships you desire, the money, time, energy that you know deep down you are capable of creating, then head on over to heatherchauvin.com/work with me. That's Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/work with me, and take the next step in the right direction. Taking a stand for how you feel means you are taking a stand for how your children show up as adults. And if you have a personal question or topic you'd like me to answer on the podcast, text me 313-710-5199. 313-710-5199. You are so worthy of feeling good. Now go do some scary shit.